This is Bharat FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.
ये है भारत FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.
Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal, welcome and adab. You are listening to Bharat FM, a one of its kind, multilingual, eclectic provider of entertainment, information, and news to Indian Americans. Headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio, Bharat FM airs shows out of Cincinnati, Chicago, and Phoenix. We take pleasure in our ability to cater to your bhakti, chusti, sfurti, shakti, and masti needs with our audio and visual shows. Check out bharatfm.com for our online program schedule and archives. I'm sure the content will definitely tickle your senses. Tune in via the 24-hour web streaming on bharatfm.com or via the Bharat FM app. More information can be procured at 513-488-5070.
Namaste and welcome to another episode of Decoding Victory, an interview program where we invite luminaries and leaders from different fields to draw inspiration from their life journey. Today, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Dr. Raj Mehta to the show. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Raj Mehta, who is a much admired leader in education, very passionate educator, and everybody, his colleagues, friends, students, everybody have great words to share about him. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Raj Mehta to the show. Hello, Dr. Mehta. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thank you, Vijaya, for inviting me today.
It is such a pleasure, Dr. Mehta, to have you. It is really our honor and a privilege, actually, to be able to spend this time with you and talk to you. So thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
Well, again, thank you. And I'm kind of honored and humbled and a little awestruck that you asked me to talk to you and your group. But I'm so looking forward to it.
Thank you. Yes, and as we continue our program, our viewers will be joining in, and many of them admire you as their leader in University of Cincinnati. I would like to just share a little bit more about you to our viewers. So, Dr. Raj Mehta is Vice Provost International Affairs at the University of Cincinnati. He works closely with UC, that is University of Cincinnati's administration, to achieve the university's goals, particularly those related to strategic international partnerships and entrepreneurship. Dr. Mehta focuses on building comprehensive partnerships with institutions of higher learning in all regions of the world. As a Carnegie-rated Research One university, UC creates these sustainable partnerships to support innovative, interdisciplinary research collaborations that can solve complex world problems. The partnerships offer UC students an international education that prepares them for the borderless workplace of the future. What a wonderful thing to know about you, Dr. Mehta. And as we continue this program, we will learn more about your life journey and your accomplishments. Welcome again.
Well, thank you again. Appreciate it.
Dr. Mehta, so we would like to take a few steps back in your life, and if you don't mind sharing about where your life journey began, how was your childhood, how was your growing up days, and then we will continue from there, if that's okay for you.
Well, I can try for sure.
Whatever you would like to share, it's up to you.
It's kind of hard to crystallize a life journey, so to speak, in a few words or a few minutes. But I have to, I always go back to my grandmother. So she, this is my father's mother, And she grew up in a very small town in Gujarat, in a small town called Dahod. And this is, of course, pre-independence India. So we're talking about the 1930s. And when my father was just a year old, she lost her husband, and hence my father, essentially, my father's father, that is my grandfather. And you have to go back to that time in 1930s. She's a young widow, with no support, so to speak, and four kids to look after. And the other cousins of mine tell me stories of women in those days were. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So women in those days had, if you were a widow, you had basically three choices. One was try to find work, but then many other women didn't like that because you would be interacting with their husbands, or this widow would be interacting with other husbands, or there would be other men who would look to young widows as as like a golden ticket, sort of, and so on. So extremely difficult times. And I just think of if she had made a wrong choice, uh, the probability of somebody growing up in that time frame with that kind of a background, I'm just not sure what the probabilities are, but it has to be pretty minuscule for someone to be successful, and for all four of her kids to be extremely successful, and her grandkids to do even better, is pretty remarkable. So that woman, of course, inspires me all the time, and I think of her all the time. So yeah.
That is amazing to know about it, Dr. Mehta. Thank you for sharing. So, would you like to share a little bit more about your siblings and your family, the kind of environment that you grew up in?
Right. So I think you can just imagine that we didn't come from anything that we would call like an affluent family. I think my father was a medical doctor. He went to Mumbai from this small town, and as he tells me, he just had two pans all of his medical career, and he would wash one and wear the other one, and that's how he grew up, and that's how he inspired us to grow. So that's kind of we grew up in a very how do I say this, just barely middle class family, so to speak. And I think that those roots still carry with me even now, hopefully.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, right. And so humble beginnings, as I understand, that you come from. And so growing up, did you face any challenges because of the kind of background, or were you more inspired or motivated seeing the hardships or challenges in your face and in your parents' life to do better?
Well, I'm sure a lot of people growing up in India at the same time probably had similar challenges. I think I remember one or two incidents in my life which I still remember, and so obviously much must have stuck with me. The one was, I grew up in Ahmedabad at that point, and we had what we would call uh, Hindu-Muslim riots, essentially. And this was in 1969, so I would be maybe 7 years old. And that's the first time in my life I saw somebody get burnt to death in front of my eyes as a 7-year-old. And it's always it's stuck with me. I mean, I can still visualize exactly where that happened, and the cries of that person. I still remember that, and uh, yeah. So it's kind of held. I mean, I have these kinds of one or two or three incidents which they stay with you, and they make you think. Maybe not at that time frame. You just but they make you think of the world we live in, and small incidents that change your life, and hopefully you can maybe change somebody else's life based on those small incidents that happen to you. So that comes to mind. There was another one which is kind of weird. You might say it's weird, but again, my dad used to love traveling by trains, and we decided one time to take a train all the way to Assam. This is I still remember the time frame was 1972, and if you recall Indian history, the 1971 war. Where large numbers of refugees from Bangladesh, or then West Pakistan, but now Bangladesh, were in places like West Bengal and Bihar and so on. I've never seen so much poverty in my whole life, and I thought I grew up poor, or not certainly not affluent, and that has stuck with me as well. So I think there are these few incidents which you just always remember.
Right, right. True. And as a 7-year-old, especially, I can't even imagine what must be going through in your mind seeing such a horrific incident. I mean, it's beyond a young boy's comprehension about what's going on. So, thank you for sharing that. And I don't know how you comprehended it, or how you, even whether there was a grown up with you to explain what was going on, or how do you process it as a
Well,
young kid? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I processed
Right.
then.
Yeah.
Like so many people in India that time, our driver was Muslim, and obviously, I think he was extremely shaken because we were driving in a jeep at that time, and the next 3 days, I remember him staying with us just because he was too afraid to go
Right.
out, and it was pretty violent times in 1969 during those riots. So obviously, it stuck to me, and yeah, I mean, as we talk about this late, it has made a huge impact on how I view the world,
Correct.
and anyway, we'll kind of talk about that later as
Right, right, right. Sure, sure. Yes, yes. I mean, such incidents, when you witness them, experience them, they can be life changing. I would say, even if you could not process it clearly, but later, as a grown up, when you think about it, you still have vivid memories of those, and you probably can even feel, get those feelings back
right.
when you think about them. Yeah,
Right. And, I think everybody in life has incidents.
correct.
And at that point, nobody recognized that that's what kind of changed you a little bit, maybe a lot. And, on reflection, you think of, okay, these were like my 5 or 6 key moments in my life, which, everybody has path, right? You have a fork in the path and you take one or the other. And these incidents kind of allow you to take one path or the other,
Right.
and has huge consequence on how you view the world, and what happens to you afterwards in
Agree.
your life. Yeah.
Right. Agree. Agree. So, did you grow up mostly in Ahmedabad then, or
No.
any other places in India?
Yeah. So, my father used to work for this company called ONGC, which is an oil company in India. And because of that, he used to get transferred every few years. And so I've spent a lot of time of course, in Ahmedabad. He got transferred to multiple places in Gujarat, and then to Assam, which is what we were talking about. And then for I guess the formative years, I should say, between my 6th grade and my 11th grade, were in Dehradun, which is where the headquarters are of ONGC. So, and then of course I spent time in Mumbai later on. So I've lived at quite a few places in India actually, and that gave me an appreciation for how diverse India was.
Right.
And the people, and the languages, the religion, the cultures of so many different places. It was a fascinating experience growing up. So
Right. Right. That's good to know. And how about your college education and high school and college education? Were they in different places then?
Yeah, so high school. I mean, part of my schooling, of course, was in Dehradun, the sixth through the 11th grade, and then my high school was back in Ahmedabad. And then I talk about my, the 2 years of high school. Obviously, this is difficult because you move to another place in high school, hard to make friends back. And so I used to only study, I guess. And this is the India's of 1970, where all you did was study in the 10th, 11th, 12th grades. And then I ended up going to IIT Mumbai for my mechanical engineering. So my 5 years after that were in IIT Mumbai. So in Mumbai, actually.
So, Dr. Mehta, at what point did you get this idea of moving to the United States? I believe it was for your higher education, and what really motivated you?
Yeah. So I when I was at in Mumbai, and you have to remember there are these incredible people, incredibly bright folks. I wasn't one of them, clearly, but they were just unbelievable people in terms of their skills, and many of them chose to go to an engineering college in the U.S. right after graduating. And at that point, maybe naively or whatever, I thought that I should stay in the country and work in the country. And, it was just something I felt I should be doing. And so I chose not to go at that point. But, I went to get my MBA at Gujarat University in Ahmedabad, and which is where I met my wife. So I talk about these life changing events, and that's where I met her. But the school had an exchange program, and this is an exchange program. What that means is you spend a semester in Japan, and 2 Japanese students come to your university. So I had the opportunity of spending a whole semester in Japan. And you talk about, like, we had to attend classes, and I remember one specific class. It was a class on history, and this Japanese faculty member gave a completely different interpretation of history than what I knew of Second World War. His version of Second World War was not the version I studied in my 10th grade or the 11th grade, was not the version I read in newspapers in India, and was not and this is, of course, pre-internet times. You should remember
Right.
that.
Of course, of course.
This was the time when, and I was shocked that there could be someone else who has a completely different interpretation of just history. I mean, history to me sounded like dates and
Correct.
actual
Yeah.
events, and
Right.
and if you told me then, I would probably say that wasn't the occasion or the incident, but that was probably the incident where I said, you know what, whatever education I got, and which was a fantastic education, but there's something clearly lacking in it, in the sense that I don't have a full picture of what the world is like, or how the world views the same events that I thought were concrete facts, and so on. And you'd always read about the liberal arts education in the US and why it's so important, and why it makes you think critically about world events, and so on. So that's probably the time where I decided that maybe I should actually pursue that education for the sake of knowledge and to learn more. So.
Right. Very, very interesting. So, how was your experience in Japan otherwise? So, here is a little bit about background that I have. So, my husband used to work for a Japanese manufacturing company. And so he tells the story of him going to Japan for just 2 months and being a vegetarian. It's a big challenge, and just the language. Of course, he had learned a little bit of Japanese before he went. But you spending a whole year, how was your experience there, Dr. Mehta?
Yeah, whole semester. But yeah, I'll
Whole
say,
semester.
yeah.
Right.
So I grew up in a vegetarian household,
Right.
like your husband, it seems, and
Yeah.
I had never. I mean, we used to, obviously we consume dairy and we consume eggs, but that's pretty much the extent of my culinary adventures, so
Yeah.
to speak. And I land in Japan, and the people, my hosts, picked me up, and they said, "There's this Japanese street food. Would you like to eat?" And naively, I said, "Sure, why not?" And I think if you know what food I'm talking about, it's essentially known as octopus balls.
Oh
Basically,
my God.
they are octopus cooked in fried and cooked, essentially. And I would say that would be my first not vegetarian food ever. And it was a conscious decision that said, you know what, if I'm going to spend 6 months here or a semester here, and if I don't partake in food that they eat, I'm missing out on the experience. I'm putting my hosts in awkward situations of trying to find food for me. And I will be a good guest and try to, be as Japanese as I could be. And so I basically ate everything I possibly could in Japan, and I guess changed my uh, ideas about food. Many of my friends would probably say I'm kind of a foodie. I eat everything essentially. So, yeah,
Okay.
but it starts there.
So that's where your international experience began then,
Yes, I mean
right?
Japan was by far my first, outside the country experience. Yeah.
Wonderful to hear. So let me just take a moment to thank all the viewers who have joined us for our live program. I would request you all to please leave your comments. Let us know where you have tuned in from. And if you have a message or a question for Dr. Mehta, please leave it in the comment box and I'll be happy to read it for him. And Dr. Mehta, you are welcome to respond to any of the comments or questions from the viewers if you'd like
Sure.
to.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on. So once you completed your MBA, I believe in Japan, you had already thought about pursuing your higher studies in the United States, or at least coming to the United States. So did you apply for admissions then and then move here?
Yes. I mean, so after going back home, I started preparing for my GMATs and all the application processes and so on. And naively again, I only applied to two universities, mainly because that's where my cousins used to live, and my parents wanted me to go to a place where there was some family support. So I ended up going to the University of Utah for my PhD program, and yeah, I was. It's an and for those of you who are not familiar with the United States, Utah is an interesting state in itself. And again, I learned so much about the Mountain West and the love for nature and the wonderful people that are have a different faith than many people that you think of in all of the United States.
Right. And so were you in Salt Lake City?
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
It's a beautiful place too to be in, right, Dr. Mehta?
Yeah.
So did you enjoy some outdoor adventures while you were there besides studies, or?
Yeah, I mean, of course, by then Sheila and I were married, and so we would, and she was also in school, but we would every break we would be out in some national park, and there are just unbelievable number of national parks within driving distance. Whether it's Yellowstone to the north or Grand Canyon to the south, and so many in between.
Right.
And we would just camp, and yeah, I mean, we've done some dumb stuff, but it was good experience overall. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess we all learn through our own experiences. So,
Yeah.
so you probably have more stories to share with us once Mrs. Mehta joins.
Well, I'm sure she has stories to tell us.
That's good to know.
I think the worst. Well, I guess the craziest one was we chose to go down the Grand Canyon walking, of course, and we were completely unprepared. And coming back up those 10 miles was probably the longest 10 miles in my life. But yeah, so the crazy stories like that, of course.
Right, right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Very, very interesting. So, coming back to you mentioned your grandmother in the beginning of our program. Who do you consider as your role models and inspiration in your life?
Well, so of course, I mentioned my grandmother, and
Right.
obviously, people have their parents and their, uh, but and other relatives. But you everybody goes through a time where uh, they have a partner, a spouse, a person who has unconditional support for you, and you just have to kind of you have to get lucky in life sometimes, and I've been doubly lucky in the sense of my grandmother that we just talked about, and she could have made some not optimal choices, and I wouldn't be here, obviously. And
Right.
same with same with your spouse. Essentially, if Sheila wasn't there with me, I'm not sure we would have been able to do all that we've been able to do as a family. And so uh, she is my absolute role model in terms of being here in the US. And this last 1 year has been actually interesting in that sense, because I've spent a whole year here with her, and not travel anywhere, and it's been actually been wonderful. She might not say that, but
I, I'm waiting to hear from her.
I'm sure she would probably say something completely different. But
Right. So, Dr. Mehta, we do have some good friends of yours joining in. We have a comment that I'm going to show on the screen. There is a typo there. So it is, I guess it was good you accepted to fully partake Japanese experience. Amit Shait sent this message along with its food that has helped you also get full experience of all the places you visited. I agree with him. What do you say, Dr. Mehta?
well,
Yeah, go
I,
ahead.
I agree with him completely. And there's a uh, uh, I used to take students abroad all the time, and because that Japanese experience was so dear to me, and it changed how I view culture, I would force my students not to go to a McDonald's in Paris, or go to a Burger King in Finland, or whatever. I mean, the places we traveled to, that was not an option for the students. I would tell them I would dock their grades if I saw them at those
Oh
places.
my goodness.
But I think that's, yeah. So yeah, Amit travels more than me, so he can absolutely relate
Nice.
to what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Good to know. Thank you so much, Amit Shade, for joining in and also for your comment. It is wonderful to hear more from Dr. Mehta. And we do have more, comments coming in. Rajesh Nandi Kolmat says, very interesting. I looks like folks are enjoying the conversation. And there's another one from Amit Shade. Raj posts wonderful pictures of all the food he's offered as a guest at various international universities. Well, that's good to know. So, where do we get to see these pictures, Dr. Mehta?
Well, I think I have to go back to traveling again, but I think if you follow me on Facebook, I tend to post them, and
Nice.
that was also the same is a student story, essentially, because in those days our students would refuse to travel abroad, and the main reason, other than money, was that they were not sure if they would be able to partake in food in, say, a Finland or a France or Germany. And I would post pictures of food because a lot of my Facebook friends were my students, just to encourage them that the food is not that difficult, and it should not be the reason why you don't travel abroad. So that's where the food pictures on my Facebook profile started. So.
Very interesting. We look forward to maybe perhaps sometime you'll start a travel blog if you haven't done it already, and and we can
Fair
get
enough.
more
Yeah.
more insights into your travel. So, if Mrs. Sheila is available to join us, we would love to welcome her as well.
Yes, she's right here. So yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. Hello, namaste, good evening. How are you, Mrs.
Doing well.
Mehta?
Thank, thank you for having me on your show, and I'm really happy to join the conversation.
It is a pleasure. We've already heard so much about you, but we would love to hear more from you about um, Dr. Mehta. And he did mention your experiences in Utah and also that you met in college. So I would like to take just a moment to introduce you formally to our viewers here. So just give me a second, please. Mrs. Sheila Mehta, as we see her on the screen, was born and raised in India. She spent her college years in Ahmedabad, Gujarat, where, as Dr. Mehta said, they met. On finishing her MBA, she worked for a few years. A homemaker now, she's pursuing her love for Indian classical music by staying involved with Jhankar, an organization in Cincinnati, USA, that promotes Indian classical music and dance. Welcome again, Mrs. Mehta.
Thank you so much. Thank you very
So
much.
I would have to ask you if you don't mind sharing a little bit more about Dr. Mehta from a personal view, as a family man, as a husband, as a travel companion, anything that you would like to share with our viewers.
Um, well, I can say one thing about our relationship or our journey together, that he's the grounding force. Ironically, I'm a Capricorn, which is a earth sign, and he's Cancerian, which is a water sign, but he's actually way more grounded than I am. We do, I mean, both of us love to travel. And so I enjoy traveling with him. And like he said, we had some great adventures in Utah. But one thing about him that really over the years that I have learned, that he stays very, very calm during even stressful times, and he's even during a crisis. um, I remember 2 or 3 years ago, there was a group that went to South America, and there was a student who was suicidal. He had left the hotel. And it was winter. He did not have warm clothes. And I mean, I was just observing what was happening. He had not slept for 3 days. He was constantly in touch with the group that was there. Of course, there were others at UC who also played a role, but they were looking to him for direction. And he had to take some really tough decision. But through it all, he was so calm. And the priority was to get the student home safely, which he
Right.
did. Um,
Wonderful.
and I was just like, I don't know how you do this.
Right.
Um, so that was, one aspect of him that I really admire. The second one, of course, he likes to get things done. So if he has to go buy a TV, he gets it done in half a day. Like, it's done. Whereas I might go to 5 stores before I decide something. But no, yeah. So those are the two qualities that he has brought to our marriage. And it's I mean, all uh, anybody's life journey has its ups and downs, but uh, you know we've learned a lot from each other, and you kind of grow up with each other. I was really 20 when I got to know him. So
well, I mean, just listening to your words, I feel that is what makes him such a great leader, a successful one, and a well admired one. I know Dr. Mehta from the day one that I have seen him virtually, and I've listened to him. I just feel he's such a down to earth person. I feel he has this immense knowledge in him, great wisdom, but so humble, and that was, I mean, as much as he may not believe all of us or accept it, I just feel like that was probably one of the points that we all wanted to interview him and have him on this show. So thank you so much for sharing this with us.
You're
Um,
welcome.
now I have to ask, the Bollywood influence that we all have coming from India, right? So both of you mentioned you met at college, and the name that Dr. Mehta has, Raj, it instantly brings to our mind, you know who? Shah Rukh Khan, right? The King Khan of Bollywood. So you'll have to tell us, we should we think of Dr. Mehta as a college person, as like a charming person, or who is more like a Shah Rukh Khan kind of a character, or a very studious kind of very focused person? I know, I'm sorry, Dr. Mehta, I'm asking this question, but we would love to take this opportunity with Mrs. Sheila to know more about you. If you
He,
don't mind sharing, Mrs. Mehta.
no, I mean, he certainly had his way of, how to charm someone, because I think we were classmates and we were working on a project together. And the first thing he did was to take my phone number. So, and I come home and there's a phone call for me. So, yes. But overall, he was very quiet. He didn't talk much, but even then, I mean, he was extremely bright, but never very humble about it. But he seemed like a person who would forge his own path. Um,
Nice.
so and so we kind of connected. I mean, it was just when you're that young, you're it just there just seemed to be a connection there. So that's how
That's
it happened.
Thank
Um,
you. Yeah. No, that is so nice to know for us, especially as youngsters, we just love to hear these personal stories. So I apologize for making it.
Oh no, that's fine. But by the way, his hero is Amitabh Bachchan.
Oh my goodness. Okay, we have another big Amitabh Bachchan fan here at home. That is my husband. So, so wonderful to know that. Oh, so Dr. Mehta and Mrs. Mehta. So over the year, during the pandemic, you got to spend a lot of time together. And we heard from Dr. Mehta that he absolutely enjoyed this time. I'm sure it was very different from the years, with the busy working life and now staying home. I one side of it, if you look at it, it's like a blessing to be together with family during this time. So how was your experience, Mrs. Mehta, with the pandemic? What kind of how did you spend the time? Did you all travel? I don't think you could travel, so did you all go out within Cincinnati a little bit, or spend more time at home
Well,
pursuing some other interests maybe?
so in the initial days, the kids were here, so we, that was nice, and we spend a lot of time together with the kids as a family. And then, of course, they left, and it's been nice because we do now walk together. So we do get to spend some time with each other. I think the only adjustment for me was because he travels. I'm so used to being on my own, and so I have to now work around his schedule a little bit, and so sometimes I had to get used to that. But then again, you adjust, and you know. Uh,
Right, right. So we do have, looks like your friend Shweta Swali here. Can't wait to hear what Sheila has to say about her experience of having Dr. Mehta home for the past year. So looks like your friends are also taking this opportunity to hear more. That's wonderful. I'm so glad they've joined in. And we do have Dr. Raturi, who's a good friend of Dr. Mehta's as well. In fact, he is hosting his own program, but I somehow we had a timing conflict. even then, despite him hosting his program, he somehow made it here online, Facebook Live, and he has sent a few questions. We will talk about it soon. And we are getting in more viewers with comments. Thank you so much, Ravi ji. Ravi Khanna is tuned in from Dayton, Ohio. He's enjoying the interview. Thank you for the compliment. And again, Amit Shade, thank you so much, sir, for your compliment. And Nivedita Bakshi, good to see you both, Sheila ji and Dr. Mehta, enjoying all the experiences you're sharing. That's good. And Sudhir Matani ji, cool man. That is for you, Dr. Mehta. Folks are really enjoying hearing this. So we are missing having your children online today. However, what would your children share, you think, Mrs. Mehta, about their father, Dr. Mehta? A couple of things that you would think that children admire. I'm sure they had their moments with you. So, if you'd
Um,
like to share something.
he is so up on current events. So anything, even in our group chat, they do expect him to give his input on anything that's going on. So they always write and say, Dad, what do you think about this? Did you read this happen? So, um, he's, been a big influence on them, especially traveling, in wanting to know about other cultures. And so the kids have also grown up. You do need to bring the world together. I think they both feel very strongly about that. So which I'm glad that that influence has been there. And one thing also that I would like to share also about Raj's family is that they community service in the family is very high. I mean, my father-in-law, he was a doctor, but he, anybody who came from Dahod, he made sure that they had got the right medical treatment. His aunt in Dahod runs an NGO. So I learned a lot, also from the family about, how important it is to serve the community. Of course, I will never be able to match what they have done, but at least you start becoming aware of the fact that you should. And
That is,
go ahead.
sorry, go ahead, please.
And of course, he has his quirks about getting things done on time. So if they had to submit a project when they were in school, like the first question was, when were you told to submit a project? When is it due? And why are you doing it the night before? So
How true, how true. We have little ones and we have this struggle too. Our kids are still in elementary school, and that is probably one of the first questions we ask as well. So, yes, as an Indian parent, I understand where that comes from. So nice of you to share this. And what an inspiration having such folks as your father in law and Dr. Mehta's aunt in the family who have continued or who have done a lot of community service and continue to inspire the next generations as well. That is great to know. And a couple more comments and compliments from folks coming in, tuning in. Karthik Raturi, wonderful couple, always compliment each other. Thank you, Karthik, for the compliment. So Abhijit Desai asked you a question, Dr. Mehta. So what's next, Raj, as you enter this phase of your life?
I knew Abhijit would ask that question, but I'm in higher ed, as you know, at the university, and when you think of our current world has 7 billion people, and you think of the students that you're working with, they are 20 years old, 25 years old, and by the time they get to be my age, or about 50, the world will have like 10 billion people. And the question is, where is the water going to come from? Where is the energy going to come from? What's the healthcare is going to look like? Technology is changing so fast. What will the world's work culture look like? What would the careers be like? And the question for us and it's not just in higher ed, but all of us, is, are we preparing our next generation for that world? And when they inherit that world, would they be prepared to take on the responsibilities that go with all of these challenges that I just talked about? And I think many of the friends you mentioned here today, they are incredible people here in Cincinnati who are my friends and are our friends. We are very lucky because they are so passionate in their own ways. They are also creative. I think they all have children who have the same. I mean, they are trying to teach everybody the same goals, which is, you're going to live in a diverse world. How do you make your world a better place to live in? And so, to Abhijit, I don't think our phases end. It just, the responsibilities change, and how we talk to people changes. I'm sure as a 25-year-old new research faculty member, or a 28-year-old, I probably thought of world in a very different way than I do now at 58. And but at the end, we are talking about the same thing: is how do you train our next generation so that they can make the world a better place than we left them. I don't know, Abhijit, that's too philosophical a question for you, but this is what I think of all the time. So
that's wonderful. That's such a great message. I think there is so much for the rest of us to learn from it too. So thank you for sharing that, Dr. Mehta. So as we have Mrs. Sheila here, so I would like to ask you any specific incidents, moments of life with Dr. Mehta that you would like to share with our viewers while you're here.
Oh, there are many.
Other than we heard about the Grand Canyon story.
Well, but you haven't heard the real Grand Canyon story.
Okay, so we have something more, looks like.
She can say, or I can say, but we went completely unprepared. You finish that thought.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, we were not prepared, but so we start walking down Grand Canyon, and we have our tents on. It is actually on his shoulder, and it starts getting heavy. So he says, "Look, let's just go back. Let's just put this tent in the car. Let's just take our sleeping bags and let's go down to the river." And this is a 10-mile hike all the way down to the river. Like, okay. So that's what we do. And we slept on the campground without a tent, just in our sleeping bags. Now, there could be snakes. We did not even think about the dangers of doing that. And,
so you were probably in your 20s then, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and then we walked all the way back the next morning, and got into the car and started to drive. And it started to get, dark. So then he couldn't keep his eyes open. I couldn't we were sleepy. Both of us were. So we parked the car on the side of the road and decided, like, okay, let's both take a short nap and then start driving. When I woke up, it was sort of really dark. The sun was must have been 4 a.m. There was not a soul on the road. And it was so scary. And we think now that if something had happened to us there, nobody would be able to even find where we were.
Wow, what an adventure.
So our kids tell us, Mom and Dad, y'all were more exciting before. What happened to you? You became so boring. So,
I guess we all become wise, with age.
Or boring. Or boring.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's probably boring for them. Yes, I know. My son says he's still in 5th grade, but he's like, boring adult stuff, mom and dad. So it's like, yeah, I understand. But that's a great adventure to remember and laugh about, when you think about those memories. So looks like both of you completed your MBA together in Ahmedabad, and then you moved to the United States when Dr. Mehta was doing his PhD. So was it at that point that you decided to give up your working career, Mrs. Mehta?
No, actually, what happened was I again did my MBA because I could complete it in a year, and I mean, he had only 1 year to finish his
Right.
PhD because he came back. We got married. We came back, and then both of us came. I mean, I came, joined him. So I thought a degree would from the US would help. So I, got myself another degree. Then I actually there was a company called Novell that did local area networking. So I interned with them for a year, and then when we came here, also I worked for a bit, and then finally, at some point, I thought that it would be nice just to be home, spend time with the children,
Right. Right.
and then on, pursue my hobbies. So, I've been happy being home.
Okay. Yes, I think some of the best moments of our life is when kids are growing up. So I'm glad you got that time to be with them more. So thank you for sharing that. And before we say thank you to you for joining our show, anything else you would like to share? We do have compliments coming in from more of our viewers and your friends. Anita Singh Raturi says, "Wonderful couple, always compliment each other." Thank you, Anita ji, for joining in. And Mrs. Renu Ahuja has tuned in from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and she says, "Wonderful couple." So we have a lot of folks here. Rupak Swali says, "Raj is a true global villager." And we did get the reply back from Mr. Abhijit Desai. Terrific answer, Raj, for what he had asked before. So thank you so much to everybody for tuning in. That's so nice to see a great group of friends that Dr. Mehta and Mrs. Mehta have here, and they have all tuned in. That's so nice of you. So, Mrs. Mehta, before we say bye to you and thank you once again for joining in, would you like to add anything else?
I would like to say that, my village is here, and you can see that. I mean, our friends have just been wonderful, and we feel like Cincinnati is now our home, and it is, it's people who make that village, and my friends, my neighbors. I've just met some very, very wonderful people who have helped me because, with Raj traveling, to have a support system, it was very important for me, and I never felt like I was alone. So yes, before I leave, I would really like to thank all my friends for creating that village for me, and I'd
That's
like to thank you for being such a wonderful host, and it made me feel so comfortable, and I really, really enjoyed
Oh,
sharing.
thank you. Appreciate that, Mrs. Mehta. But trust me, it is our pleasure to have you here. And I'm sure your friends who are listening to you right now are also saying they are so blessed to have both of you in their lives as a good friend. So, Dr. Mehta, before Mrs. Sheila leaves, would you like to add something? I know you mentioned before. I'm not sure whether she heard that she is one of the biggest support folks to give you the biggest support in your life for your career. So, anything else you would like to add?
No, I think that's kind of. I mean, she's always there. She's like the rock, and yeah, yeah. I mean, so much of what I've done in my UC career would never have happened without her support and her constant backing. And yeah, so she's just been a wonderful inspiration for me all through my life.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing this. Yes, Mrs.
I
Mehta.
would just like to say that, I took care of the home front. It has been his hard work, commitment, dedication, and passion that, he's, what he has achieved. But yeah, I mean, with all his travel, I made sure that the, home and the kids were taken care of. And that's all I did. But
Yeah,
again,
sure. Yeah.
But trust me, I mean that is I believe
More
the
work.
more work. And also, also, although Dr. Mehta was in his office traveling, I'm sure that is one of the big motivators for him too, coming back to the family and having a family at home and knowing that you are there to take care of them was probably a big point of relief for him too, so thank you for everything that you have done and you've shared today. That's wonderful. For us, from our point of view, here we are looking at a great couple, loving couple, very inspirational couple. Thanks for joining, Mrs. Mrs. Mehta, and we do look forward to welcoming you again on another show for
Well,
Bharat
thank
FM.
you. And thank you to Bharat FM and to all of you. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you. Thank you. So, Dr. Mehta, we would like to continue our conversation. It was so nice that Mrs. Mehta could join in and give her special personal touch to our interview program today. So, let us go back to your career for a little bit. Now, we did speak about how you completed your education in India and then you moved to the United States and then you did your PhD here. So, your PhD dissertation, Diffusion of Innovation, a segmentation approach, was there a certain thought process behind you picking that as your dissertation topic?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about my dissertation, but can I talk about a different paper actually? Because
Definitely, yes, please go ahead.
My first ever research paper, and since you mentioned Amit
Yes.
Rathuri, um, actually he's the reason why I'm here in Cincinnati, because he was one of the folks I met at the College of Business, and he sold me on the idea of why Cincinnati was such a great city and a beautiful university. But the paper, he might even remember this paper actually, deals with people's favorite objects, right? So I just moved to the US, and I would go to a person of Indian origin and their house, and I would see their objects that they would display in their house. And I was contrasting those with objects people would display in a house in India, and they were completely different. And so my question was, when you become an immigrant, do your favorite possessions change? And I was like, it was a new idea, and it's still my one of my favorite papers because it's not my style. I do math, but this was completely different, but was very inspirational for me overall. So, and I don't know if Amit still remembers that paper, but we talked about that in when I first came to Cincinnati.
Yes. So, although Dr. Raturi was not able to join us throughout the program, he did send a message for you, Dr. Mehta. So, I wanted to wait for a little longer until he would join because his program ends around 9 o'clock and he's expected to join any minute.
Yeah, we can wait. Yeah.
Yeah, I will read the message a little later, but he does remember what you're talking about. So going back to your career, especially now being the Vice Provost for International Affairs, I would like to ask this question. What are some of the biggest challenges that you see that international students have that, A, deter them from going for studying abroad, and B, when they do finally decide and move to another country or maybe United States, if you'd like to specifically talk about, what are the biggest challenges that they face here? If you'd like to mention those, and also if there is anything that the University of Cincinnati in particular is doing to address these.
I mean, life has become so much better than when we were new students to the US or any new country, for instance. But the challenges are the same, which is you're 8,000-10,000 miles away from home. Your parents, your siblings are back home. It's very likely you might miss those special moments, either celebratory moments or sad moments. It could happen, and students have to be mentally strong for that eventuality, or those kinds of events. The second, of course, is the educational system in the US might be very different from what it is back home. And many students have trouble understanding or getting used to the new format. And finally, I think is, I think I talk to my students all the time, is sometimes what happens is if you're coming from, I'll just say Andhra Pradesh, because we have a large number of students from AP. and they all make friends with other students from the same state. Forget the rest of the country, or forget your purpose for coming here is to make friends with people from the other 100 countries that are represented at our university.
Right.
The purpose of your coming here is also to make friends, learn more about local culture, because that's what's going to make you global. And we try so hard to break that cycle of the comfort of making friends with just people from your own state. And I just mentioned AP not because I'm picking on AP students, but that is by far one of our largest international student community at the University of Cincinnati.
Right. We understand. Do you see any shift in the global trend about how folks or students are perceiving the education system here in the United States, especially in recent years? And and also considering the pandemic, any expected changes, big changes for this coming year, 2021, the fall?
I think actually our university didn't suffer any lack of or didn't suffer from fewer students coming to the University of Cincinnati. Many of our students didn't come in fall of 2020 just because there were travel restrictions and embassies were closed, but they all, or large numbers of them actually came in January for the next semester. And many of them are going to come in this summer. So over the year, I think we didn't lose very many students, except, of course, the Chinese students, because the US embassies in China are still not open, and hence the Chinese students cannot get visas to come to the US to study. So obviously, we are missing our Chinese student population. Trends-wise, I think, well, Vijaya, you have to tell people how we met. But I strongly believe that technology can allow students from different parts of the world to take classes without having the difficult task of traveling 8,000-10,000 miles. We might be also, like in the experience we shared together, we might be able to get faculty members from 7, 8, 10 different countries to talk about their interpretation of, in your case, global business or just business overall. We had another short seminar on public health, and similar. You can get people from many different countries and their expertise, and talk to students from so many different countries in one setting. I think is pretty empowering, and I think that might be the future of higher ed at some point, especially in the global sense.
Correct. And thank you for bringing that up. It definitely is a commendable job that University of Cincinnati is bringing about programs like Global Back to Business, where students from all around the world can enroll, and also at such easy facilitation and organization done so well. Everybody is able to join in and learn from the best in the industry and the best of the universities around the world. So thank you for bringing such a great program to students around the world. And also, and I would like to actually thank you on behalf of all the Global Back to Business students. They were excited to know that you are our guest today for our program. And many of them are tuning in now, and many of them who the time zone doesn't work out will be watching the video later. So thank you again, Dr. Mehta, for that.
Absolutely, yeah.
And Dr. Raturi looks like he's tuned in now, and he does say what a joy listening to Raj's personal journey and Mrs. Mehta's perspectives. And at this juncture, I would like to take a moment to read out the message that Dr. Raturi had sent for you. So Dr. Mehta joined our college, and I got to read one of the first papers that he wrote for the Journal of Marketing about how certain ethnocentric tendencies in consumers prevail. His example of how the Indian diaspora in US has an affinity for Godrej products sticks to my mind vividly. Very creative research. So that was one point that he mentioned. And then another thing that he mentions is later he became the biggest champion of the Back to Business program that we just spoke about and supported and participated in it in ways only a true friend would. His sessions on social entrepreneurship were most popular with our audience, professionals in transition. So I just wanted to read that out to you, Dr. Mehta. And you, Dr. Raturi, and you are such a great team. And along with the rest of the folks on your team, you have done a commendable job at the University of Cincinnati. I hope more students take benefit of these programs that you're. So if anybody's interested, should they just go to University of Cincinnati website and find more information now listening to our conversation here?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think well, first of all, I have to tease Amit a little bit. He's too kind. And, in person, he will say something completely different to me than he would say, no, I'm just kidding. He's a great friend. And I think before he joined, I think I told you that one of the reasons, or one of the main reasons I'm here in Cincinnati is because of him. But yes, so if you go to UC International, I think you should be able to find all the information that you need if you are a student looking for an educational opportunity, international student looking for an educational opportunity in the US. So that would be the place to go to.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mehta. So, talking about the same topic about international students, what advice would you like to give students who are interested to coming to the United States and maybe hesitating, especially with the pandemic just this past year? And anything particular that you would like to share?
Well, I mean, media hypes a lot. I have to, but so Cincinnati is, when I travel around the world and people ask me about Cincinnati, first is they kind of don't know where this place is, and once you explain the location, because they always think in terms of Californias and the New Yorks. But this is it's a great community and a beautiful university. And I think we genuinely care for our students. I think it's some of the faculty members. I think you are like Amit and are here, and that's sort of the type of faculty members we have. And I think the students should just realize the fact that if you find an institution where people care for your outcomes, people care for they expect that you'll make a difference in our global world, that you will take responsibility of this world that you will inherit. I think this is the place for them. If that's not what you want to be, then maybe there are other universities. But I think we have very high expectations from our students, just because you spend your entire career on something like this. You want to make sure that you spend time and effort on people that will make a difference to our global world.
And what would you say to students who may be hesitating in terms of the financial burden that they may incur, especially knowing the situation that many students come from in India? Anything that University of Cincinnati or any other universities in general, from your experience, you would like to share to those students to encourage them to apply and be able to have this dream, fulfill their dream of higher education in the United States?
This might be a naive response, but I talked about where my family came from,
Right.
and all of us believed that education was investment. If my grandmother didn't believe that, I wouldn't be here. And same with the entire family. So I think if you're passionate about what you want to do, it might take a bit of investment. Assume that this is a wise use of your scarce resources. I think people should definitely, and maybe it's not a degree in the US, but just being out of the country spending a semester like I did at a random place might be a good compromise. But I think it's so important to be outside and learn from the global experiences that you can experience only as a student. I think you can't do this if you are in the 40s, and it has to be at that time frame in the 20s when you are more. You meet other 20-year-olds and you meet with faculty members or other thought leaders. It's a wonderful thing. So I know money is a big concern, but at the end of the day, yes, it's a huge concern, but I think it's a good investment overall.
Agree. And then also, I personally feel there is no age limit for education, or learning never ends, so to speak. And would the university also encourage more folks who are middle aged and higher in age to still pursue their higher education if they're listening in?
Oh, absolutely. Again, I was talking about the study abroad experience,
Yes.
and because when you have a career and you're taking a class, say at the University of Cincinnati, it might be hard to spend a whole semester outside the country. But absolutely, I mean, the global experience clearly is very important. But Amit and I were just talking about this a few days ago, which is we don't know what the workforce is going to look like 20 years from now. We know that there'll be autonomous cars. We know that there will be AI. We know that there will be that is artificial intelligence. We know that our careers will be very different. There'll be a different way to treat healthcare, and everybody needs retraining. I mean that we do. Everybody needs upskilling, retraining, and I think that's where any age group. I think if you're constantly learning, upskilling, that's the only way to survive. One, and the second, give back. I mean that's how you contribute to the world essentially. So.
How true, Dr. Mehta. So would UC be continuing to look into more programs for virtually, so folks or students could still enroll from their home countries and join in to get this world-class education?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're trying to see what's the best model for this, because the experience that you participated in is when you think of it, it's very intense in the sense that you have to ask for 10 different faculty members to come and speak. You have to recruit students from 8 different countries or 9 different countries. So how do you make that scalable? And how do you make it into something that you can repeat on a continuous basis is a challenge. But we would love to try and experiment and see what we can do in the future, because you now have friends in 10 different countries. You can write to them and many of them will respond. How cool is that? I mean,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
pretty inspirational actually. So
Definitely. You're bringing the world together. I was thinking of that while you were mentioning about this, that it is not just about getting education, but it's also about connecting people. So, we can connect as friends, and we can connect to the best educators around the world. We can learn from them and basically develop both professionally and personally. So thank you for bringing such programs. And we look forward to hearing more from the UC's wonderful staff about more programs that are being offered virtually in the future. So continuing with our conversation, Dr. Mehta, about your life journey, we did hear that under your early leadership, UC developed the Joint Co-op Institute with a university in China, the first of its kind to use UC's model of mandatory co-op in engineering programs. So how did that come about?
yeah, so this was my first joint program for the university, and we had a amazing dean in our College of Engineering who had friends at Chongqing University in China. And our university is famous for cooperative education. What that means is our students in many disciplines go to work one semester and take classes the following semester. And the Chinese university, in this case, Chongqing University, was looking for a different model of education. What they found was in China was all about rote learning. As they said, a faculty member would talk, students would listen, take notes, and there would be an exam at the end of the semester, and the students would basically um, write back all that they had taken notes from the faculty member. Essentially, that was the model, and what China was finding was that's not going to help them with as they move up in innovation, as they try to create new products. They needed students who were not just into rote learning, but they were more creative and had more work experience, could use their knowledge in their work setting. And so basically, we worked with the Chinese institution and the Chinese government to make this possible, such that the Chinese students would spend the first 4 years in China, work for mainly US companies that would offer them work experiences, and then they would come to the US at UC for their final year. It was extremely successful. It's been a wonderful model. Obviously, now with the US-China tensions, the students haven't been able to come to the US this year. I hope that gets resolved soon. I mean, it's a unique model between us and a Chinese university.
Yeah, very, very interesting model. So, was this a result of the Chinese university approaching the UC, or are you in pursuit of, organizations or universities at different parts of the world where you can do such collaborations, basically?
Yeah, so I think I used to travel a lot, and now that I think of it, I was kind of crazy how much I traveled. I mean, I would travel pretty much once a month or more to places around the world. And what we would do is we would talk about, like, our university, our educational system. We would talk to our partners about their universities, their educational system. We talk about the values that we just talked about, which is you want students who are ready to give back. You want students who are global citizens. You want students that are who think of the world that they will inherit and make a difference. Not every university in the world has the same values, and so you have to find universities that have similar values. And then I think it's easy to partner and work on areas that are mutually beneficial to both. And so we have partners at universities in Ghana, Botswana, Egypt, Colombia. I mean, you name it. There are partners everywhere. Everywhere the partnerships are different, but they are mutually beneficial overall. But they all rely on that core value. I do not think you can compromise on the core value of why of education. I mean, that's the key message overall.
Right. That's wonderful to know. We also gathered that you helped create the unique agreement with Future University in Egypt, through which University of Cincinnati helps the developing university with curriculum, accreditation, and administration issues. So UC has, I believe, 11 strategic partners around the globe now. And that is wonderful to hear about all these collaborations. So thank you for sharing more, Dr. Mehta.
Yeah, and I think we are 200 years old, so we have lots and lots of partnerships. But these strategic partnerships are universities that are they have similar goals and values that we have, and so they are sort of similar to us.
So. Now that we have heard so much about your accomplishments as a leader in education and being in this field for so long, if you don't mind, let us shift gears a little bit again back to your life journey from your personal perspective point of view. What would you consider as the turning points in your life? Anything that you would like to share with us? I know you had mentioned as a young child you had seen a couple of incidents, witnessed them, and that made a big impact on you, and you still remember them and think about them. And also, you mentioned about you thinking about your grandmother even today, and what a great influence she was. So, anything that you would like to talk to us about the turning points in your life, and also just to our viewers who may have joined just now, we are having this wonderful conversation with Dr. Raj Mehta. You are welcome to put your questions or comments in the comment box here, and we'll be happy to share it with our guest here. Thank you, Dr. Mehta.
So, I think that's an excellent question, and everybody has these turning points or transition points, whatever you want to call them. Mine was, I think I told you at least two of them, which is the one was the terrible incident in 1969 with the race riots. I mean, with the Hindu-Muslim riots. The second one was, of course, the one in Japan, where in a history class of all places.
Right.
There were two others, and I'll connect all of them together. I told you about my train journey to Japan, to Assam. And I still remember I was talking to school kids in Assam, and I'm coming from Gujarat, remember that. And there is, when you think of the sun rising, and remember this is again 1970s, I didn't know anything about time zone differences or whatever. And the kid in Japan, in Assam, would wake up at 4 a.m. because the sun rises at 5 a.m. and they would go to school at 5 a.m. And I'm coming from Gujarat, that's almost like a 2-hour time difference, theoretically, although India chose to have a single time zone for sake of unity and so on. And you think of people have sacrificed so much without knowing that they are waking up at 4 a.m. for the sake of the unity of the country. And China did the same. In a much larger country, they're one time zone. So that's kind of stuck to me. The second one, and I'll connect all of this together. The second one was when I moved to Dehradun, my Hindi was terrible. It's still terrible, but was really terrible. And I used to get teased all the time about my Hindi. And I sought refuge in another group of people who used to get teased, which were the Sikhs, because at least in that time frame, people would make so much fun of the Sikh for I would say just very stupid reasons. Was anyway, you know what I'm talking about, was terrible, and I would seek refuge with them because I didn't want to be teased. And so I got this affinity to, work with people that get teased and so on. So I talked about my time in Japan. I still remember this day, which is October 31st, 1984. It's vivid in my mind because that's the day Indira Gandhi was killed or assassinated by her bodyguards. And I believe in the next 3 days, maybe 3,000 plus Sikhs were murdered because of the fact that the bodyguards who killed Indira Gandhi, our prime minister then, were Sikh. And I've always wondered, why would you attribute the wrongdoings of an individual person or two individual people to a whole community? And how is that tolerable, or how is that tolerated? And it's the same thing which we talked about with the Hindu-Muslim riots. It's the same thing with the massacre of so many Sikhs after Indira's assassination. And coming to the US has helped me with that, in the sense that we do talk about the fact that you cannot attribute what an individual does to an entire community. And I think because we are a minority community here, it makes even more sense that just because a person, say, of an Indian subcontinent origin does something, it should not attribute to the whole community. I mean, how wrong would that be? And so I try to explain that to my friends and family in India, and sometimes I feel I don't connect. It's still very easy for people in India sometimes to make attributions for a whole community, and so that's made a whole difference for me in how I teach classes, how I travel, how I talk to students about the diverse world that they live in, and so on. So that's made a huge difference overall. These 3 or 4 incidents, and these happened when I was 10, 11 years old. So obviously they must be pretty powerful influences for me to still remember them, 40 years later. So
Right.
I don't know if that answers your question, but everybody has these, and everybody's are going to be different, essentially.
Right, Dr. Mehta. Yeah, thank you for sharing this. And these incidents from history, um, whether we read them or we've experienced them, because in 1960s many of us were still not there, but just hearing about them, about the riots, about, as you mentioned, an action of one person or a group of people, the result or the backlash that a whole community suffers. Just hearing about them, it just is, it's so tragic. I mean, this is completely wrong, as you mentioned, and we are still seeing similar incidents happening in the United States and in different parts of the world, unfortunately, even after decades worth of struggles and suffering that many have gone through, and also many great people like you here who understand the consequences were not right and who have been trying hard to change the world. But still, I think we still have a long way to go. So appreciate you sharing that with us. And would you like to, based on all these experiences in your life, would you like to share any words of advice for our youngsters, whether they are growing up in the United States or in India, especially coming from you? Makes a lot of difference and makes sense because of your global exposure and the experience that you've had with students and people all around the world, different places. So if you would like to share some advice, that would be great.
Well, I mean, I go back to, there's a phrase in the U.S. Declaration of Independence about life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. I think we've heard a lot about life and liberty, but it's the pursuit of happiness, I mean, which we don't quite learn about, or actually, if you are in a university setting or wherever, nobody really talks about pursuit of happiness and what that means, or doesn't ever give you, nobody ever gives you tools of what those are. And when you think about those, and I'm talking to students here, so more than anybody else, when you think about those, there are like 4 ways in which people are genuinely happy. If you and let me just mention those. One is community engagement or community service or giving back to the community, like you are doing, Vijaya, right now. And I'm sure this is a part of a process that makes you happy. You're passionate about this, and so on. If you're exploring or learning new places or learning new things, or if you're creating something new, you're being an entrepreneur, doing research, doing something creative, or you're leading an organization or leading some sort of an effort. Those are basically the 4 ways or toolkit for being happy overall. And I think as a student, you got to pursue one or more of these. And it might be different for different people. Some people like to do research. Some like to be in creative endeavors. Some like to be community engaged, give back to the community. And some are leaders and take a leadership role and so on. And it doesn't end just at a student life. Obviously, it goes on forever. But that's where you learn all of these. And so, if you are a 20-year-old, follow some of these. Other than you can always be an engineer. You can always be X, whatever X is. You can, but pick one of these topics other than your engineering field. I think you'll be happier overall. I mean, that's kind of the tool for happiness. And I might say a few more things about my friends here in Cincinnati, but when you think of that group, they have there's a diverse group of talent in all of these areas that I just talked about. Some are global, some are extremely creative, others are kind of leaders, others pursue educational opportunities and knowledge. And it's fascinating to be part of that group overall. So it doesn't end as a student. I think it's a lifelong journey overall. But you learn that as a student.
Right. So that's a great message. And do you also have any words of advice for budding entrepreneurs, knowing that you have a specific interest in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so can I give another example, which is a
Sure.
stupid example, but
No. Please go
so,
ahead.
yeah. So I was traveling in Thailand, and I would go for a walk every day morning. Sorry,
No,
I would
that's
go for a walk every day morning, and I saw this flower vendor, and he would be selling um, flowers every day. And I would one day asked him, like, why you're selling flowers, and you are basically getting you're selling all your flowers in front of a Buddhist temple, and then you leave. I said, what if I give you equivalent of, I think was about $20. I don't quite remember the currency transformation. It was about $20. And I said, why don't you buy more flowers, and you can, that will help you build your capital so you can flourish. I mean, your business would flourish. And the next day I went, and he had the same amount of flowers essentially. And I was so disappointed. I was like, uh, I felt cheated. I felt like I didn't do something right, and that got me interested in the whole process of social entrepreneurship overall. And what that means is you can be an entrepreneur, but you have to give something back with your entrepreneurship. If the entrepreneurship is just for you to pocket additional resources, is okay. I mean, it's fine. But I think if your entrepreneurship leads to another global outcome, which is, say, reduces poverty, or it helps educate a woman in a developing country, or it creates something new that helps a homeless person somewhere else. Would be great a way to be an entrepreneur. So some of the stuff our students have done, I'll just give you one example,
sure.
just so you.
Sure.
So we had engineering and design students, and they built like an app that they could attach to a trash in a Cincinnati park, and as soon as the trash got filled, this app would send a text message to somebody who could then empty the trash so that people don't overfill. So they are using their knowledge, which is their engineering or design knowledge, and creating something which is helpful overall. And they could actually make lots of money out of this if this becomes successful. So that's, I think, is the right way to be an entrepreneur overall. So that's what I teach in my social entrepreneurship class.
We feel like listening to you forever, Dr. Mehta. I mean, this topic itself is so interesting, and the way you're explaining it with examples, I see such a great teacher in you there. So it is very inspiring and such a powerful message for all of us. So I think all of us have a social responsibility. So with whatever skills and education we are equipped with, if we are able to leverage those and give back to the community, as you mentioned, and just partake in that whole contribution with our social responsibility, that it'll change the world, I believe. So that's a great empowering message there. Thank you for that. So with all of your all the years of your life and the journey that you discussed a little bit with us, I'm sure there were many challenges and similar challenges are there in many other individuals' lives. What would you say is the one big strength or one quality in life that we should all have to be able to successfully overcome those challenges and still be able to pursue that success in life?
I'm not sure I'm the right person for that, but
Just from your perspective, Dr. Mehta, when you faced your challenges, how did you overcome them? What was it that gave you strength? And, we will learn from that. So,
well, I mean, I think Sheila mentioned a couple of challenges. There is always, at the end of the day, the challenges are revolve around three or four things. It's around people, or it's about money, or it's about, and when you are dealing with people, there is conflict involved. And with all of those, I think if you think of why the challenge exists in the first place, and if there is, especially with people, I think there are ways in which you can moderate it or lessen it, and solve it. Uh, the student example that Sheila gave, I mean, it took 3 days. It took a lot of effort from so many people, but at the end of the day, everybody wanted the same outcome, which was that we need to bring the student back home safe. And you got to, I mean, you cannot give up. There's no, if you just put your hands behind your back and walk around or pace around, that's not going to solve the problem. I mean, you got to find the resources that it takes to solve this very, very difficult problem. I mean, and there are many such problems. I mean, that's just one example, but dealing with people and money, there's always going to be problems like that. But at the end of the day, I think there are more good people than I think there are people who want to help. And if you build a village, a community, I think nothing is hard, I think.
That's such a great message. I see that positive outlook in you, and I see that you have a great source of strength there just with that attitude. So I appreciate you sharing all these stories and insights with us, Dr. Mehta. So here we are looking at a man who's so accomplished, a leader in education. You have publications and awards under your belt, and you've had a great life journey, good education you've accomplished in your career, and you've had a great personal life. And again, as we saw today, you have a great group of friends as well. So what would you consider as your biggest victory in life?
Well, I think that's asking for too much. But I think I talked about the happiness story,
Yes.
and what we tried to do with my not by with the University of Cincinnati's honors program was try to see if we could create a toolkit for our students to be happy. And so you think of the educational experience. I told you about the four things that makes a person happy. And so we build those into our honors student population. We give them uh, responsibility to solving the world's problems, like I mentioned. Then we tell them that they should study abroad. It's a kind of mandatory. We tell them they should do research, or as undergraduate students, we ask them to be creative, and so create a creative story, creative writing, music, and we ask them to give something back to the community, like I mentioned, and getting the whole university to buy into that vision for what they expect from the university honored students. I think that's I would say that's probably my best. Um, it's not mine because it's took the whole university to make that happen, and but I'm kind of proud of that. Let's just say that it's something that happened with my watch, with so many people's help and assistance, and I think we are we have students who are graduating with a very different outlook of an educational experience. It's not just an engineering degree or not just a business school degree, but something much different than. So I would say that's kind of, although that's kind of belittling it. Obviously, you see your students succeed, people like you, or for an educator, I think is the best accomplishment is seeing their students do well and succeed. I mean, I follow so many of my students, and there's no greater sense of pride in being a very small, maybe a minuscule part in their life, and seeing them do well. So that's obviously always the case for every educator, essentially.
Thank you, Dr. Mehta. I mean, at the same time, as a student, I can say that we are so humbled and touched with, just you being here and all the efforts that you have put in giving an excellent education. And not only that, broadening the perspective of the students beyond what an education system can provide. So thank you so much for all your efforts. And before we wrap up, I would like to share a few of the comments that have come in. And Bitan Basu has mentioned that it's a wonderful conversation, great example of happiness that you provided, Dr. Mehta. Dr. Raturi has joined us too, and thank you, Dr. Raturi. And Amit Sheth is still with us. Thank you so much, Amit ji, for being with us throughout the program. And this is wonderful to hear. I just have one question here from Dr. Raturi that I would like to ask you before we conclude the program today. And this is more about your field. So, what is the single most important idea in marketing theory in your view?
Well, so I think it's been a while since I have been in that academic field, because I've been in administration for too long. But I think the role of technology in not just in marketing, but all over, but especially in marketing, has made a huge impact and has changed our field completely. I mean, when you mentioned my dissertation paper, it was about diffusion of innovation. Obviously, it deals with technology and so on. And you think of diffusion and innovation now, it's completely changed. So to answer Amit's question, I don't know if I would be able to survive in today's academia because it's changed so much overall. But finally, it's still people are involved, technology is involved, and the marketing. Essentially, marketing's job is to find the right products for right people, so that when you are looking for a new product or a new service, someone's able to help you find that quickly and efficiently. And I don't think that goes away. I think that stays the same, but the technology has made a huge difference overall.
Thank you, Dr. Mehta. And one last compliment for you from Dr. Raturi. Raj rocks. You have such a great circle of friends. That's awesome to have all of them here with us today. And Dr. Mehta, it has been such a pleasure and honor to have you here. I apologize for going over time when the conversation is so interesting and insightful. Time flies. So appreciate you spending this extra time with us today.
And again, I'm humbled and honored to be asked to speak. I'm just, but I'm thrilled that you're doing so well. And we've had a very short relationship in terms of classroom experience, but it's thrilling to see that you have great skills to get even an introvert like me to talk. I mean, that takes amazing skills, and so you have to commend yourself on making me comfortable to talk. I think many of my friends would probably say I haven't talked this much in in 30 years that they have known me. So, so you have great skills, and thank you so much for having
Thank
me.
Thank you. That is so nice of you to say that, Dr. Mehta. Coming from you, it means a lot to me. Thank you so much for your compliment. And it has truly been a pleasure to have you, to talk to you about your life journey, to know more about it. And also, please thank Mrs. Sheila once again on our behalf. We wish you the very best, both of you and your family, for the coming days. And we hope to see you back on one of our programs again. So thank you so much, Dr. Mehta, for joining in.
Absolutely. Thanks again. Appreciate
Thank
it. Yeah.
Appreciate it. Bye. Have a
Bye.
nice night. Yep. So, back to our viewers, thank you for joining in today. I hope you enjoyed the program, and listening to Dr. Mehta was so inspiring for me. I hope it was the same for you. Thanks to everyone who tuned in throughout the program and sent in comments and compliments to us. And we hope to see you again in our next episode. If you have a recommendation for a person that would be a great guest to have on our program, please do email us at info@bharatfm.com, or you can message us on Facebook as well. We will look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Until then, stay happy, stay healthy. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care.
Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal, welcome and adab. You are listening to Bharat FM, a one of its kind, multilingual, eclectic provider of entertainment, information, and news to Indian Americans. Headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio, Bharat FM airs shows out of Cincinnati, Chicago, and Phoenix. We take pleasure in our ability to cater to your bhakti, chusti, sfurti, shakti, and masti needs with our audio and visual shows. Check out bharatfm.com for our online program schedule and archives. I'm sure the content will definitely tickle your senses. Tune in via the 24-hour web streaming on bharatfm.com or via the Bharat FM app. More information can be procured at 513-488-5070.
This is Bharat FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.
ये है भारत FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.